the founder and owner of Video for Entrepreneurs. So I'm pretty excited. Dan is just a super awesome guy. We've known each other for several months now. Does some really, really cool things. And so I'm excited to, kind of help educate our listeners and watchers as to what Dan does. So Dan, welcome. Thanks for coming on, spending a few minutes with me today.
Yeah, man. Highlight of my day. It's all work meetings after this, so I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, that's funny. This is that the feeling is mutual. I promise you. So, what we're going to do is I'm going to just start right out of the gate with your best elevator pitch. I like to call this pitch perfect. So, if you and I just met for the first time, we're on an elevator. We're going to hit our destination here in the next 60 seconds. And I look like the best possible prospect you could ever meet. You're like, oh my goodness, I want to do business with this guy, Andrew, who I just met for some reason. What would you say in 60 seconds or less after I ask the question, hey, Dan, what do you do?
Yeah, I help entrepreneurs learn how to look and sound great on camera.
That is an all-time record, I think, for the best elevator pitch and most efficient that I've ever heard.
Yeah. It generally leads to what a great friend of mine, Ryan Foland, out of California, taught me, which is permission-based pitching, because it's generally followed by like, "Oh, that's cool. Like, well, how do you do that?" And now I have permission to go on.
I like that. I like that. So it's like
Yeah,
a two-stage elevator pitch.
yeah,
Because if someone just goes, "Oh, neat," it's like, "All
yeah.
right, cool. Well, this was never going to go anywhere in the first place."
You
Uh,
nailed it exactly.
that's clever. So they call that permission based pitching. Is that what you said?
Yeah. Because then if you ask more, I'm like, "Oh, it's your fault. I'm going to talk now. So here we
Right.
go."
That's on you. Yeah.
Yeah,
Don't be mad at me. That's
yeah.
interesting. Okay. So under that thing, what was it? One more time.
I help entrepreneurs learn how to look and sound great on camera.
Perfect. Okay, so if I heard that, I would say, "Oh wow, yeah, that's interesting." I'm on Zoom calls all day long as an entrepreneur, so that's kind of neat. Like, what does that involve though to look and sound great on camera? Is that just like just getting a fancy camera? I guess.
It's kind of part of it. So we do work with a lot of people who are on calls all the time, and I only have 3 products, so I try and keep it easy. And that product's called 3 Hour Studio, where we help them get the right gear, learn how to set it up, and do the technical version of looking and sounding great, especially if you got to be on calls all day.
Okay. All right. Cool. Good. 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 Well, ding, my elevator is here, and I gotta go. Do you have a business card? That's how that would go. So
Right.
good
No,
deal.
danhaslinks.com. No time for
Ah,
a business
oh,
card.
man, you were just killing it today. Like, we're gonna all right, good
Uh,
deal. We'll get to that in a second. So,
I'm just old. That's all.
all right, so let's dig into this a little bit more, though.
Yeah.
So, I imagine there's some background here on how you get kind of started from that, and you alluded to the fact that, you started off in real life, right, doing this type
Yeah.
of stuff, but now you're in that digital realm. So how did you make that transition?
Yeah, it was clunky. I like clunky and slow and things that are like sticky and not well put together. Come out of the gate, I guess, is kind of how I approach that. So in real life, it looked sexy, but it wasn't. I worked for a lot of Fortune 500 companies, did a lot of story development and video projects for them. It was fun. I met great people, but and the logos look good on a website, so it gives me some credibility, I guess. But I would always come home and feel a little unfulfilled. And I grew up in Flint, Michigan, which is a poorer city, and I'd always come home to Flint and like couldn't help people there because they couldn't afford me. And I'm like, all right, how do I bridge this gap between like big companies that can afford me, but really don't need much more money than they already have, and then smaller, solopreneurs, small business startups that can't afford me. And that's kind of where Video for Entrepreneurs was born, was this idea of empowering people how to film themselves and really get a high quality product without having to bring in a video production company all the time. So I started doing that like 2017. And I did a version of what I do now, but it was in real life pre-pandemic. So I would go in and help them drop ship all the gear in, set it up, get them semi permanently put together. And then we would facilitate the back end, whether that was editing, distribution, or whatever the case may be. And all of that really revolved around referrals, word of mouth, and introductions. Um, I never ran an ad Even with the big companies, it was always one head of marketing knew a VP of marketing at some other big company. It was like, you should work with Dan. It was easy. Then the pandemic hit and we lost everything like many people did. Had to get rid of everyone. I was solo trying to kind of find my way, went into the forest for a while to try and find myself. And came back out the other side ahead of the curve for the first time in my life. Because as I started to pick up some freelance clients and try and figure out what was next in my life, a lot of people were still doing what they were doing, but now from home on Zoom. And I was like, oh, I've been on Zoom for 4 years. Come join me here. I'll show you how to do it and how to look and sound good there. And then the transition from in real life to digital happened. And I'll keep this part short, even though I could talk about it for an hour. I followed all of the things you find when you're like, digital entrepreneurship. How do I do it? How do I grow a business online? And most of it leads towards the guru effect, which is like build a big audience and sell them stuff. Wasn't working for me. Tried it for a couple of years, not my bag. So I ended up at something that I now call a body of work. This is different for everyone, but you take everything you know, everything you've built, even if it's scratches on a notepad, and instead of trying to do the latest, greatest thing or come up with a bunch of social posts, you take your body of work and you make it available to people. And then when they want to pay you more to get direct access to the brain that came up with that body of work, you make sure to facilitate that and make it a smooth a transition as possible from never having heard of you to jumping on a call and wanting to work with you. So that was the bumpy, lumpy in real life to digital transition.
That concept is in itself worthy of its entire own conversation, I think, because you just conceptualize something that to me is huge for people, because I'm in the same boat too of like, you're still just trying to figure out who you want to serve and how you want to serve them and all these other kind of things. But to use that phrase body of work, that puts bookends to this thing, right?
Yeah.
There's a finite amount of things that you've accomplished, and so you package that together. Now you have something you can build on. That's worth having a completely other conversation with. So,
I got a lot of thoughts around it if you ever want to have that talk.
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. We'll come back to that on another little segment. But digging in a little bit more though about you and your business, because again, the purpose of this is just to within the first gen community, help people get to know you a little bit better before they've ever even had a chance to talk to you. It just helps everybody save time and get to know each other a little bit better. But you mentioned that at one point you actually did kind of a rebrand of your business and liken that to strapping a rocket to your business. So I think anybody listening is probably interested in hearing how you did this, because we'd love to know how to do it for ourselves too. So can you expand on that?
Yeah, I know it's cliche to say strap a rocket, but that's literally how it felt. And I think every entrepreneur deserves that moment somewhere along the line. It's not always going to be around your branding, but it can be. So for a long time, my company was called 1 Minute Media, which no one ever saw. It was just the LLC. And I was known as the Antipreneur, which was kind of cool to have this contrarian take on entrepreneurship. And it was the name of my podcast for a long time and all that kind of stuff. But it didn't tell people that I helped entrepreneurs make video. So it was always something I was having to overcome.
Right.
And
Sounds cool, but not that practical
yeah,
for what you're doing.
yeah. You already have to be famous to then have a stage name, is kind of how I thought about it. Like, this is not winning me new business, but
Right.
people love to have conversations.
Clear, not
Uh,
clever. Right.
yeah, there we go. There we go. Man, that's good. So yeah, it was just kind of, going along this path, and 2020, like I said, lost everything. My worst year ever in my life. 2021, best year ever, but that's because I was ahead of the curve. So as I came into 2022, I'm like, I really need to figure this out because I can't just muscle through this all the time. So oddly enough, the whole thing started with a pretty well performing YouTube channel cannibalizing itself. And this is something that I could talk about for an hour sometime too, where everything you think you want on a YouTube channel is what was killing mine. Viral videos, lots of watch time, all of these cool things that you think you want, hundreds of thousands of views, were actually killing my channel. And so we were at a crossroads where we had to do something new, and it looked like a new channel, but do we kill this one or sunset it, or what are we going to do? Because it's completely working against itself. And we decided to sunset it, get rid of the big viral videos that were hurting it, get rid of them altogether, leave the rest of the videos because they were valuable and on point, and start a new channel. So when I looked at my YouTube partner, James Dunn, I'm like, you know what we should do? We should call this like Video for Entrepreneurs, because that way no one is ever going to guess what it is that I do. Ha ha ha. And he's like, yeah, not ha ha. I think that's what we're going to do. And then it hit me too. And I'm like, oh, shoot. Yeah. Right, yeah. So that began what was an unintended rebrand. And then as I looked at my products and I consulted with, great friends of mine who are successful entrepreneurs like Jay Klaus and others, they were like, dude, you need a product that you already do in real life, but digitize it, make it something someone can click a button and buy and do. And that 3 hour studio thing, which is like a version of what I used to do and how people get their, equipment together and look and sound good, was my first product. And then it just made sense to people like, oh, video for entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur. Oh, 3 hour studio. In 3 hours, you can help me build my studio. I'm in. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So the dumb little analogy I tell people all the time is I feel like that guy that was going to the same factory job for 30 years. And I had my brown paper lunch sack and I had a sandwich and an apple in it and it carried them just fine. And I went to work. And then one day someone got me a birthday gift and it was a nice shiny lunchbox. And I'm like, well, I don't want to hurt their feelings. I'm going to use this lunchbox. I don't need it, but whatever. And now walking into work, it's like, ooh, Dan, nice spot. Hey, have you met Dan? Dan's a great guy. We should talk to Dan. Invite Dan over to our table. It's the same lunch. I've been doing the same work for 15 years. It's a different lunchbox. And at first it was very frustrating along with exciting. Now the frustration's worn off and the excitement is what remains. But the rebrand to just let people who are casually passing by understand there was a lunch in that box instead of what's in that brown paper bag.
Right. Well, first of all, can I say I just love the idea that having a shiny lunchbox is the path to popularity based on this analogy, which is hilarious to me. But
Yeah.
it's a good analogy, though. It makes sense. Like doing the same thing, but just how you position it and package it. And just to make sure I'm understanding correctly, when you say that this YouTube channel was cannibalizing itself, it was killing itself, if I'm understanding you correctly, it's because you had these videos that were going viral, let's say, but they weren't actually about the thing that you do. Is that my
Yeah.
understanding that right?
Yeah. Super quick example. Two were first one was best mic to use was Zoom. And I just had a Blue Yeti breakdown that was really helpful for people. Still totally dialed in for video because it was about Zoom, but it ended up being about Blue Yeti and Zoom, not about helping entrepreneurs look on camera.
Right.
The second one was how to schedule your social media for free. And it was still around video and how you can post your videos places. And it was talking about the like Facebook Studio and TweetDeck, these things that were already built into the social platforms that you could use without having to go get like HubSpot or something like that. Those are two of the four that blew up. And so they're bringing thousands of subscribers, hundreds of thousands of views. And YouTube is like, yeah, that new video you put out about like camera confidence, nobody cares, dude. And
Right.
it's like, no, but that's what it's all about.
Right. So
So
you're
yeah,
going viral, but drawing the wrong audience, basically,
100%. Yeah.
which is another thing that would be worthy of its own,
Yeah.
kind of discussion.
It
But
was a journey. Yeah.
yeah, that's really interesting. Okay. Well, third and final question for you then. How did flipping your community 180 degrees? So it
Yeah.
sounds like just complete go in the opposite direction became the final puzzle piece. That's when everything started to click in place. Why is that?
Um, because it makes sense, but it was such a like duh type moment, right? So what I talk about this all the time. I actually get asked to speak in front of communities that build communities sometimes just to tell them my story, not to tell people to do the same thing I did, but to say, hey, there's other options out there. So I was trucking along community. Okay, look at all the greats. All the greats have communities. They're between 20 and $50 a month, and they offer these kinds of things. And I did my trial and got some people in, like, all right, cool. And I used the Circle platform. So I went into Circle's community and, engaged with them and saw the like best practices. And it just wasn't working. I had a pretty high price point because of what I offered.
Mhm.
And people on the inside of my community are like, I can't believe this is all you're charging me. This is crazy. And people outside the community were like, this is the most expensive community I've ever seen. How in the heck do you even get anyone
Yeah,
in there?
right. This is the worst of both worlds then.
Yeah. So even though I had taken everything from back in 2017, 2018 that was fragmented and put it all in one place, the model wasn't working for me. So like I do, and a reason I love First Gen is I reached out to people around me who have done things before and been like, "Hey, what have you seen? Not just what works for you, because that's helpful, but what have you seen?" And literally, it's almost like the frequency illusion. Like when you buy a car and see that car everywhere. I
Mhm.
had within 1 week where I had three different conversations with really successful community runners, if you will, that don't know each other, all say something kind of similar, which is, well, here's some of the models I've seen. and I've seen them work for other people. They weren't their models, they were just ones that they've seen.
Mhm.
And each one of them put kind of in first place as some of the things they'd seen that were like atypical, using your community as a support mechanism for your products as opposed to being the product itself. And I'm like, well, what can I lose here? I already have members in. I'll continue to serve them just as I always have. Ain't nobody gonna care if I flip this thing on its head. And that's why I say 180, because it was literally upside down from what it was before. Instead of
Mhm.
an entry point, it was the foundation underneath all of the things that I was selling. So I only have three products, and no matter what you buy from me, whether it's helping you with the gear, my cohort, or my editing services, you get a year's worth of community as ongoing support and education. So you're not orphaned by the fact that you bought something from me. Because a lot of the apprehension was spending good money with, whatever you would consider me. I don't care, a coach, a consultant, a
Mhm.
whatever, facilitator, is like, cool, I got you for a minute. And then what if I need help? And so I
Right.
just flipped everything and said 12 months of community, no matter what you buy from me. And the cool part is that's actually where all the good stuff is anyway. We'll get the transformation up front, but then getting your reps in, getting good on camera, learning about strategy can happen over 12 months, and you'll be around other people who are doing the same thing. The moment I flipped it upside down, it made sense to everyone I told. And I'm like, here we are again with the lunchbox. It's like, okay, I mean, this might not be for everyone, but it's working for me. So,
That's
and
awesome.
oddly enough, I'm doing less work now,
Hmm.
and it seems like psychologically, which is a lot of what we deal with people who are buying things from us, psychologically for a lot of people, it's just like crazy valuable bolt on. I
Mhm.
don't position it that way, but that's how they see it.
Mhm.
So now instead of all this hard work to get them over the fence into the community and then give them all this incredible value, I bolted onto something that they already see as valuable, and they're like, I get that too. Oh my goodness.
Right, bonus.
And I just shake my head
Yeah.
and move on.
That reminds me of something I posted a few months ago where I was like, basically, it's that meme of that total bro at a party who's like talking to this girl and she's super uninterested and you can tell from a mile away and he's not getting the hint.
Yeah.
It's like if your sales process requires convincing people of
Yeah.
the value, something's not right. You need to make an adjustment. But once you find that combination and it clicks, and people see the value in it from a mile away, now you're onto something. And using your lunchbox analogy, it's the same stuff. It's just in how you package it and how you present it. And suddenly that value proposition becomes clear. Now you're onto something. And I feel like that there's kind of a cool pivotal moment for a lot of entrepreneurs in that way. The story is going to be
Yeah.
different, like the mechanics of it's going to be different for everybody, but there's that pivotal moment where
Yeah.
you hit that inflection point. So that's really cool.
Yeah, and I like to keep it real. Like this is, this happened just shy of 7 years in. So it's not like I figured it out year 1 and started crushing it.
I
And I
appreciate
always
you
like to
saying that because
yeah,
that's a lot of people don't say that. They want to project this like, look how
yeah,
smart and successful I am. And it's like, no, it took 7 years, peeps.
s 7 and a global pandemic.
Right.
I and I never want to discourage anyone, but like definitely love to keep it real. I want to be known as the guy who didn't just show up one day like overnight success. Like, nah, man. And I like to use the lens of like a rosebud thorn on like everything I think about or share or do. So even when I look at this conversation we've had, the rose is um, you can know that you're already good. Your product is fantastic. You treat people well. You have great customer service. And it's just continuing to tinker and polish and move. That's the rose of it. The bud is if you haven't tried some of these ideas, you can do really lightweight versions of them. Hey, I'm thinking about this new product. I'm calling it this. What do you guys think? I haven't even built it yet, but what do you think? You can start to get some feedback on what a rebrand or something similar might look like. And the thorn is I'm 7 years in. I've had two and a half good years, and it's preceded by a whole bunch of blech,
Right.
and
Right.
it's also hard. None of this stuff comes easy, which sounds cliche, but it's true. And you know, I think the thorn is necessary not only to keep it real, but then to look back up the list to the bud and the rose and go, well, those kind of outweigh this. So I guess that's my protection against the thorns is the fact that there's good parts of this too. So
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Dan, this has been great, man. I really appreciate you taking some time out of your day to chat with me. Just to kind of recap, and we really only have about 60 seconds here, but this is what you're doing is more than just simply, hey, here's the equipment you need and how to tune it to look good on camera. Zoom out a little bit, pun intended. It's video for entrepreneurs. That's more than just an equipment equation here.
Yeah.
That's also how you present yourself. There's this whole other thing to it. And so what you're doing is really kind of capturing the whole thing, not just the techie pieces, right?
Yeah. 100%.
All right, good deal. Well, that was a little bit of a revelation for me earlier this morning. So I just wanted to make sure to drive that home and help people understand the difference here. Not
Yeah.
to mention just being an awesome human being. Like every time you and I interact, I just love the time that we spend together. You really pay it forward. You're so supportive of people. It's obvious that you want others to succeed. So
Yeah.
again, really thanks so much for coming on today. If you want to get in touch with Dan, this is the other stroke of genius. His domain name, danhaslinks.com. I guarantee you'll never forget that. And you can just go straight to it and find all the ways to get in touch with him, follow him, connect with him, do business with him. So Dan, you're awesome, my man. Appreciate it. And anything I can do to help you, I'm here for you. And I know you do the same for everybody in the First Gen community. So thanks so much.
Yeah, yeah. I just want to say super quick. I'm in a fair amount of communities for all different kinds of reasons, and you're absolutely doing it the right way for whatever that's worth. It's not just the content you put out, but the way you treat people, the way you position people, and then bringing our ideas like you're doing right now to the entire group is genius. So thanks for doing what you do.
That's awesome, man. I really appreciate it. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.